Today we're going to be talking about midpoint and the midpoint formula and how we can use it to help us solve problems. So first let's define what a midpoint is. It is exactly what you would think. It's a point that divides a segment into two congruent segments. So if we have C, F, and J in the middle such that CJ and JF are congruent, then J is the midpoint of CF. So we'd say J is the midpoint of segment CF. Now another related term would be bisect. If you bisect an object, that means you are cutting it in half, creating two equal parts or two congruent parts. So it ties in with midpoint. So if we have segment JK and I have another segment CS that bisects segment JK, and we have point F, such that JF and FK are congruent, that means this line segment CS bisects segment JK. And we can write this in two different ways. First way we could write it is JK is bisected by segment CS, or we could write it as CS is the bisector of segment JK. Now, something to point out is that just because CS is bisecting JK, the reverse is not true. We do not know that JK, the segment here, JK, we do not know if that bisects the segment CF right here. The only way we would know that is if we had more tick marks there. That would tell us that CS is also bisected. But that's not what I was drawing, and that's not what I have written over here to the right. So we only know that JK is bisected by segment CS. Now let's look at some examples here. The example number one is asking us to find RS. Well, RS is this whole segment, and we know that this part and this part are congruent. RT and TS are congruent. So if RT is 21.7, that means TS is also 21.7. So that means RS is equal to 21.7 plus 21.7, which then gives us RS equals 43.4. And we don't have any units in the problem, so we leave it like that. Now remember, since we were talking about the length of RS, we don't need that bar on top to talk about the segment. Because we were talking about length, we just do RS with no bar on top equals the length. Now part B, find AB. Well, AB, and again, this whole length. And if this part from A to C is 2 1/4, that means the length from C to B is also 2 1/4. So the whole thing from A to B will be 2 1/4 plus 2 1/4. And that's going to be 4 2/4. So that means the segment AB is equal to 4.5. If you wanted to put that 4.5, that's fine as well. It's just the numbers were already as fractions, so I just decided to leave it that way. Now example number 2 has some algebra in it. Point C is the midpoint of BD. Find the length of BC. So this is the middle, which means BC and CD are equal. Well, if they're equal to each other, put an equal sign between them. So 3x minus 2 equals 2x plus 3. Okay, so then we're going to solve this Subtract 2x from both sides. X minus 2 equals 3. Add 2. X is equal to 5. The question, though, says find the length of BC. So we have to take this 5 and plug it in for x here in BC. So BC is equal to 3 times 5 minus 2. And we type that in the calculator, and we will get 3 times 5 is 15, minus 2 is 13. Okay, so the only reason we set these equal to each other is because we are told right here C is the midpoint. If it didn't say that, we could not set them equal to each other. In example 3, it says in segment JF, point L is the midpoint. JL is 3x plus 18, and LF is 7x minus 32. Find the measurements of JL, LF, and JF. So we're trying to find all the measurements here. I would draw this out so we have a picture like we have in the previous problem. We have JF, and L is the midpoint. So JL is 3x plus 18. LF is 7x minus 22. So then we know that L is the midpoint. These two are equal. So we're going to do 3x plus 18 equals 7x minus 22. And then we can solve this. We'll subtract 3x from both sides. We get 18 equals 4x minus 22. We'll add 22 to both sides. And we get 40 equals 4x. And then when we divide both sides by 4, we get 10 is equal to x. So we know what x is. Now we have to plug this back into the equations. We have to find the measurements of all segments, JL, LF, and JF. Now, we can kind of take a little bit of a shortcut. We know that these two segments, JL and LF, are equal. So if I plug in 10 for x for one of them, that's going to be the same length for both of them. If you have the time, you should check both parts, and I'm going to check both parts. It's just so that you can check that your math is correct. So for JL, it's 3 times 10 plus 18. So JL is 3 times 10 is 30, plus 18 is 48. Then for LF, that's going to be 7 times 10 minus 22. 7 times 10 is 70. 70 minus 22 is 48. So these two both match. So we know we did the math right. Now you could plug in 10 for x, write an equation here and add them up and see what you get. But since we both know they're 48, that just means JF is going to be 48 plus 48, which is going to be 96. So it's really important to draw out these problems so that you know what you're dealing with. Yesterday we had some problems where it was something similar to this, but we didn't have the word midpoint here, and we had to set it up a little bit differently. Because we have the word midpoint here, that means the two parts are equal to each other. All right, let's move on. Like I said the other day, we're going to skip the constructions because it's hard to show you how to do these using a compass when I'm on my tablet. Let's move to the midpoint formula. We use this in the coordinate plane if we want to find the middle of 2 points, or if we have the endpoints of a segment and we want to find where the midpoint is, we use this formula. And what you do is you're going to take the two x coordinates and divide by 2, and take the two y coordinates, add them up and divide by 2. you could think of it as the average. We have 2 x coordinates when we're dividing by 2. We have 2 y coordinates and we're dividing by 2. Remember, the x values always come first in an ordered pair, and the y values always come second. Now let's use this to help us solve this problem. And we have a picture over here to kind of give us an idea of what we're trying to do. And sometimes the problem might be easier to solve by using the picture instead of the actual formula. But let's practice using the formula so that we know what we're doing. So here are our points, and we want to find the midpoint. So I have x1, y1, x2, y2. So the midpoint formula, x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2. And then I just plug in what I'm given. x1 is -2, x2 is 4, y1 is 5, y2 is 3, or 2. That leaves us with -2 plus 4 is +2 divided by 2 gives us 1. And then 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So let's go over and look at the picture to see if that makes sense. And this point right here is 1 over and 1, 2, 3, 4 up. So yes, this makes sense. Now let's look at this one very carefully because it's not asking us to find the midpoint. It tells us that the midpoint is 3, 4. One of the endpoints is 1, 6, and we have to find the other endpoint. This is one where a picture is probably going to be more helpful. We're trying to find this point down here. Yes, now I understand that in a grid we can go over and count that point and say, oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 2. I understand that, and you could do it that way if you wanted to. But what if we didn't have this grid? What if we just had the picture or just this information here? What you could do is look at the difference between the x values. So 1 and 3. If we take 1 and we add 2 to it, we get 3. Well, 3 plus 2 is 5. And we can do the same thing with the y. 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. You could do it that way. Without a coordinate grid, how I usually do it is I have, we have A, we have M, and we have C. And we know that point M is 3, 4. We know that A is 1, 6. So then I kind of do loops and say, okay, 1 plus 2 is 3. And then 3 plus 2 is 5. It should be going up by the same amount in the x direction. And then for the y, 6 minus 2 is 4. We get a minus 2 again, and we get 2. There is another way to do it with a formula, but I find that to be a little bit confusing at times. This, to me, makes a lot more sense, and it's quicker to draw it out. Example number 5 is asking you to do the exact same thing. So what I want you guys to do is pause the video and try it out and see what you get. Once you get an answer, unpause it, and we can check it out. All right, this is what I got. I drew it out, and I did my little adding or subtracting. and I just want to talk about it real quick. A was one of the endpoints. I set it right here, and M was the midpoint, so that's why I put it in the middle. And 7 minus 10 gives you -3. So I did -3 minus 10 to get -13. Same thing for the y coordinates. 6 minus 5 gives you 1. 1 minus 5 gives you -4. Now, if you wanted to double check to make sure you did this right, if you use the midpoint formula with A and C, you should get M as the coordinates. If you look at 7 plus -13 divided by 2, you type that in the calculator, you will get -3, which is what we got here. You do the same thing for the y coordinates. You do 6 plus -4 divided by 2, you will get +1, which is what the midpoint given to us was. So you don't have to do that every single time to check your work, but it is a possibility. All right, for this problem, we're obviously not working with our partners right now, but what I want you to do is I want you to try it, draw a picture, draw a grid, write some numbers down, just make an attempt and be ready to discuss it or share with us what you've done. Even if it's not correct or even if it's only a little bit, we just want to have something to start with and something to build off of. So make sure you attempt this and be ready to talk about it. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like the video and subscribe.